My name is Ezequiel Delaney and I have been working during the last 5 years as a professional material artist using Substance Designer to make photorealistic materials for outsourcing studios focusing AAA game development. And today I'm gonna show you what are the 5 basic knowledge you must have if you want to learn Substance Designer. So let's get started. The first thing you should know when working with Substance Designer is how Grayscale Information works between a range of 0 to 1. And there's a specific reason why I say this. So in order to make your own materials and to go from a square like this to a result like the one I'm about to show you that would be something like this, you need to understand really well how does Grayscale Information work and how can you actually blend all of these things together. But let's not get ahead of this. So Substance Designer works with Grayscale Information. That means a value between 0 and 1. So I can create here a gradient map to show you that in here you have a gradient. If I go to this one here, you're gonna see that all the values are at 0. If I go to this one, it's gonna be everything on 1. By looking at this, you can see that 0 means black information or black color and 1 means white. Now, what does this mean for us in the world of 3D displacement for our materials? As you can see, you have here a really great example. So I created the shape, which would be like a square. And you can see that where the square is, in here we have a huge displacement, and the rest we have nothing. That means that in our image, yes, that we have here, all the pixels that are black have 0 information. That means there's no information at all, and all the pixels that are white have full information, meaning that they have a 1. Now there's nothing on top of 1 and there's nothing below 0. If you have black, then you have no information at all. If you have white, you have capped your information. Yes. And the main question now is, how do we build our materials having only these 2 values? And this is what's going to take us to our second point. Our second point of knowledge in this case is going to be how to blend information. And in this case, we're going to use the blend nodes of Substance Designer. I have already made a video that if you want to check out on which of these blend modes does. But if you want to have like a short introduction to this, these blend modes allow you to do mathematical expressions between 2 inputs of information. Yes, so as you can see here, yeah, if I go into my blend mode, I have an input and they have 3 inputs and 1 output. The first one is a foreground, the second one is a background, and the third one is the opacity. Usually your main shape or your main line on your node composition should go to your background, while the second information that is going to affect your main line should go to the foreground. Now let's be a little more explanatory. So what's happening here is that the information we input into the foreground is going to be directly affecting into the background. But again, this is going to be like math. Why? Because here you have a subtract mode. Yes, so we are subtracting information. We are subtracting the information from this shape onto this shape. That means that we are subtracting ones, yes, to this shape in this specific area. That's why we get this one. Now let's say for a moment, yeah, that I want to change this. So I'm gonna get a non-uniform color. Yeah, that just generates color, but I can change this here to a grayscale, and I set this to 0.5. Yeah, and I want to turn this square into gray. So what I'm gonna do is, once again, I'm gonna use a blend. But in this case, yes, I'm not gonna use subtract. I'm gonna use multiply, because we are multiplying information. If you have 1, yes, which is this color white, by 0.5, that was gonna make this 0.5. Any number multiplied by 1, it's gonna be exactly the same number. So now that I have this, I'm gonna go here and I'm gonna subtract this 0.5 to my main square, and you're gonna see that, wow, we have 0.5. Why? Because I'm subtracting to 1 half of its value, so the color in between this, and this should be actually the same, because we are working with math. Now, how can we translate this to actual height information and in order to create our own shapes? So we have said that 0 is no information, 1 is full information, being the highest point of your displacement map. Let's see how it works when you use a gradient, because something we haven't said so far is that actually we can use any point between 0 and 1. It doesn't matter what number it is as long as it is in between these 2. So for example, what if 1 is the top of my information and 0 is the lowest? What would a gradient generate? So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to multiply my shape, yes, with my gradient and see what would be the outcome of this. To my surprise, yes, I'm having a gradient, but look at this. Now my shape is starting at its highest point and it's going down to its lowest point, as you can see here. Now, if you don't believe me, this is really like the core to actually making, different shapes and understanding how all of this works. So just to support what I was saying just now, I just brought you an ornamental I'm making for a roof ceiling for one of our latest tutorials, where you can see that I'm building a shape. Yes, and this is something really important. You need to understand how to build shapes. So you can see how I got a square and I started transforming it into different things, making different mathematical equations until I got to the end result. And you can see that this gradient is what actually allowing us to make this pattern, because we need one part that is going to be on top of the rest, while the other part is going to be below the others. If I were to remove this gradient, what's going to happen is that information is going to be flat. So using gradients and all the range of values between 0 and 1, it's going to be really important to us. And the blend node and blending this information is what's going to allow us, yes, to use all the values in the ranges between 0 and 1. Now, is the blend the only node that is going to allow us to create things like this? Let me tell you, no. So there's two more nodes you need to know, and it's the Blur HQ Grayscale and the levels. Why? Because the third point of knowledge you're going to talk about is learning to control your information, and these two nodes are going to be essential to this. Why? You can see here, yes, in my shape node, that in my 2D viewport I have a really straight line, yes, but after I blurred this line, you can see how all the pixels kind of like went afar, like kind of expanded, and if I zoom in, you're going to see that now I have a gradient. You can see the lines here, all these pixels, and the more I go up, the more I get closer to white. Yes, and the more I go down, the more I get closer to black. So these pixels are being spread over by our blur. Now, what is the levels doing? The levels allow us to control this information. Yes. Now you can use the histogram levels like this, yes, where you just move these things, or you can go here and click on the values settings. This is the third icon, and you can use this one to have a little bit more of information. But for me, honestly, I'd rather have, this other result. So now we have our levels here, and I want to show you something really cool. Let's see how we can use this. So I'm gonna bring, these are the grays, yes, the midtones. These are the lowest points, the blacks, and these ones are the whites. And you can already see how this is actually affecting our shape. So I'm gonna pull my grays here and bend my blacks down. Look how our shape changes. See how this we have a just really sharp square, but now we have kind of like a gradient in here. Yeah. Now you don't believe me? Let me show you. Let me grab this here and let me show you the difference between one and each other in the free view displacement. Yes. Don't worry if at the beginning you don't get this really right. It's just practice. So you see, this is the initial shape, and this is the shape after controlling our information. And as you can see, it's actually getting quite soft. See? And I can change this, and I can do actually a lot of things with this. I can even use a more advanced node, which is called curves. The curves node is just going to be exactly the same as the levels, but it's going to allow me to control the information in a more specific way. So you have these two gradients here, yes, from 0 to 1, to the top and to the side. And this is going to allow you, yes, to generate something different. Yes, when I say something different, it's going to allow you to actually generate points where you can control the information of that specific point and range. So as you can see here, yes, I'm making this. I'm gonna make this now, yeah, and maybe I'm gonna do this because I wanna kind of like form this in here. Then I'm gonna do this, stretch it out a little bit, then another one around here. Yeah, and just playing around. I'm not going for something specific. Like you can see now how this information is being manipulated. Look at this. I can manipulate this information as much as I want in different ways. Yeah, and this is the secret, to creating or shape building inside Substance Designer. And the funnest part of this is like I can change this, and it's gonna keep being procedural. See, I change this of shape, and it's exactly this. Now if I go to a paraboloid, it's gonna change, but the same effect is gonna be applied to all of my shapes. Doesn't matter how, because this is a procedural workflow. so I don't have to worry about it. See? Now, if you're gonna be making materials in Substance Designer, then you need to understand how to make patterns. Yes, and this is gonna be our fourth knowledge of the day. Making patterns is something really important in Substance Designer, and it's gonna be the key to everything we are going to do later. So as you can see, you can create patterns in different ways. Yes, you have circular patterns and something more kind of like traditional patterns. Now there's 3 nodes here, so I want to show you the 3 of you. The last one we're not going to get into much detail, but there's a big difference between the first one and the second one, and that big difference is if I go here and I display timings, you're gonna see that right now there's not much going on. Yes, but you have down here the green number with MS. Yes, those green numbers mean the amount of milliseconds it takes to your computer to render everything. Yes, and let's see if I can make this load again. No, I have to do something else, so I'm gonna leave it for later. So usually, yes, the tile generator is gonna take less milliseconds than the tile sampler, and the results you can achieve are literally quite the same. Now this tile sampler has more advanced inputs, yes, in order just for you to create more organic shapes or maybe have your pattern aligned to something specific. Now let me change a little bit the displacement because it's actually killing my eyes, and we're gonna talk about pattern generation here. So I'm gonna remove this. So when you do patterns, there's 2 ways you can do it so far from what I want to show you. So first off, if I using a tile generator or tile sampler, yeah, and you can use the parameters of this to create things. Like for example, I want to create a brick wall. Great, now I have kind of like a brick wall. Yes, those that are the bricks are kind of like a line top, and I can change this. I can change this quite a lot by doing a little bit of scale random here. Yeah, then I can offset this by 0.5 because I want this not to be exactly the same. So I'm just gonna do 0.5 here. Yeah, see, I can do rotation random, that is gonna make things go crazy, but let's say I just want a really small rotation, so 0.01 is gonna work. Yeah, and if I want to go crazy with this, I can go some luminance random to add some height variation. Now as long as you keep on working on this, you're gonna realize that there's some of these things that it's gonna be best to add it to another place. But once again, I want to take you back to the first step of knowledge that we've seen today, and it's height information. Yeah, so you can see that I added random values to each of my bricks in the grayscale, and you can see that there are bricks going up and down. Yes, that's also really important. Now what happens, yes, we want to do another kind of pattern that is a little more specific, because if I have to be honest to you, making bricks, it's one of the most simple patterns you can have. Yes, the shape we are using for making bricks is actually quite repetitive and you can make it change. But what happens when you have something like this, where your pattern is made of unique shapes? Well, in this case, yes, what you can do, that is what I have applied over the last 5 years as a professional, is I make each piece individually. So I go over and I make a piece individually, yes, and I apply it into another node. Yes, this node can be as part of circular grayscale, yes, as you can see here, or it can be another tile generator, yeah. Like for example, if I were to do this in another way, maybe, yeah, let me show you. I would do something like this. Let's say I want to make a roof tile. Yeah, something I have done recently in a tutorial for you. So let's say you want to do a roof tile. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna pull this here, yes, and I'm gonna rotate this 180 degrees. Now I'm gonna remove this from here. And what I can do with all of these nodes, yes, is that you see that it says pattern input 1. So I can input my own shape. The only thing is I have to tell the node to change the shape. So I'm gonna go here, image input, yeah. And of course, as the tiling amount is different, we're gonna have a weird shape. So now you see, now I'm gonna start scaling this kind of like this. And as you can see, there's mixing information. Why? Because the tile generator is adding information one over the other. So we need to go to the bottom of this and change the information from add to max. Yes, as you can see, this is already giving another vibe. So now I'm gonna lower this, yes, the luminance random, and I'm gonna lower a little bit the scale, maybe a little bit like this. So if I input this here, you're gonna see that now these things are kind of tiling, and they do look something similar to tiles, but they're not right there yet. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna lower the scale of this. In fact, I'm gonna cut this so it doesn't kill my computer while I'm recording. I'm gonna lower this a little bit, maybe a little bit like this. And what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna use a transformation 2D. Again, this is gonna help me, yes, move my image to different places, kind of like crop, or be useful for blending information. Like for example, what I'm gonna do right now. So I'm gonna get a blend node, pull both of them and set this to max lighten, because I want to blend both types of information without wanting to killing the amount of information we have. So now I'm going to do something like this and something like this, maybe something more like this. There we go. Yeah, something like this should be better. Now place this here. Voila, you have some scales, tile roofs, you can name them as you want, but you were able now to create this, yes, really nice pattern that makes sense, the information is well placed, and in the 3D world and scale, it looks really good. Now the fifth knowledge you want to know if you want to actually make materials in Substance Designer is masking, yes? So right here I have a tile generator with a brick pattern with an amount of 10 in X and 30 in Y. I'm gonna add a little bit of offset here by 0.5 just to make it a little more random. And we're going to talk about masking. Masking is really important and I'm going to show you why. So let's say I want to add more bricks with different shapes. So I'm going to get this here, I get the levels to control this information, pull it to something like this, yes. And if I check here, the result is pretty much what I wanted. Yeah, pretty much right on the spot. And as you can see, I can even pull this further to make some really nice shapes, which I actually like a lot. Now the problem is that maybe my bricks won't look like this all the same. Maybe I want some of my bricks to look like this and some of my bricks to look something more like this, more relaxed. How can I blend these two types of bricks? Now I have the right answer for this. So you need to choose, yes, your main, let's say, pattern. So I really like more this, yes, pattern as my main one. So I'm gonna keep this as my main one and pull this on top. Yes, so what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna replace some of the bricks in this image with some of the bricks in this image. Yeah, so how I'm gonna do this? I'm gonna get here a threshold. And as you can see, it's not giving me really great feedback now. So I'm gonna pull it kind of like around here. And this needs to be precise. And what I'm gonna do now is I'm gonna create a flat fill. Now the flat fill, now what it does, it reads each individual shape, yes, that has at least a pixel of distance with the other shapes and adds them RGB values, kind of like vector values. Yes, and as you can see here, the milliseconds are now working. So you can see the threshold is 0.22 milliseconds. That means it's quite fast. But this one is in orange because it's taking 141 milliseconds. Yes, that means it's not that fast. If you see a number in red, that's when you need to worry. Now from this flat fill, what I'm going to do is I'm going to get a flat fill to random grayscale. This is going to assign random grayscale values to all of my bricks. What I can do with this later is create a histogram scan that if I pull the contrast up and then move the position, you can see that I can start choosing bricks. Now how I'm going to replace this? I'm going to use the blend node again, and I'm going to use the copy mode. Why? Copy node allows us to copy the information we input in our foreground on top of our background. Yes, but if we want it to be specific in different places, we need to use an opacity. Yes, so what's going to happen now if I can choose? See how the bricks are changing? In fact, you know what? Let's just make this a little bit more exaggerated so you can actually look at this. I'm going to make this smaller and replace it here. And I'm going to pull this down. So see how some of my bricks actually started changing on shape? And I can do this for many different reasons. Like for example, I can come here, yeah, generate a new flat fill to random grayscale. And as I don't want them to have the same information, I can do this into a random seed. Yes, once again, I'm going to use a blend mode to combine both informations, but we're going to use a multiply because I want to lower, yes, the height of my bricks. As you can see, this is going to be too strong and everywhere and it doesn't feel natural at all. So I need to do a new mask. So what I'm going to do, once again, and this is more advanced masking maybe, you need to copy this histogram scan. Yes, and to this new mask, you need to subtract the information from the mask on top. Why? Because you don't want, yes, the mask that we're going to be using for height variation to be affecting our previous one. Actually, in this case, it wouldn't matter that much, to be honest. You can actually make some adjustments here, like for example, if you have space in your memory, you can actually create a new one and do a second random seed and get a new histogram scan, plug it here, and then you go in here. So you can now see that you have a specific mask that is allowing you to choose which bricks are gonna start falling down and which ones don't. And this, once again, is completely procedural because I can keep on changing this. I can set this to 10 to 40, changing the scale, and it still gets working. Yeah, it's the same pattern but with a different tiling. Now that you know the 5 basic knowledge of Substance Designer, it is time for you to put it to test, and I have the right place for you to do it. With other professional material artists, we have created a Discord community where we host events with anyone who is learning to make materials. These events are for free, and you can join us or ask for feedback in this server. If you want to become a material artist, you can go to the description of this video where you will find the Discord link invite, click on it, and once you're in, let us know why you want to learn Substance Designer. I hope this one goes good for you, and I'll see you in the next chapter.